Hey! Thanks for tuning in. You're watching the Dice Tower. So?
Hi, I'm Eric Summerer, and here's what's coming from the Dice Tower this week.
Hey folks, welcome to the Dice Tower News for August 5th, 2013. There is a lot going on. This is one of the busiest months of the year for board gaming wise. And so there's some cool stuff coming out from Dice Tower. This week we'll be putting out our top 10 Euro games list. Z, Sam, and I, we often get accused of not liking Euro games, so we'll be talking about our favorites. Eric Summerer will have 2 more installments in his top 100 games of all time, so you'll see those posted this week. And there's quite a bit more coming up. We're actually doing some recording this week for the first, our new podcast, Dice Tower Showdown. That won't be posted for a few more weeks, maybe even up to a month from now, but it is in the works. We are getting things started. Pretty exciting stuff. Let's get to the news. Well, the news is certainly heating up. There's a lot of different things going on this week. First of all, the Charles S. Roberts Awards were announced. These are awards that are basically war games. They cover the gamut of war games. They're very specific on what periods they have their war games for. They also even talk about computer games for war games. They announced several. I'm just going to highlight a couple. First of all, for their science fiction / fantasy game, they picked the Star Wars miniatures game, which I thought was interesting that a group of war gamers thought that was a good game. And then a couple other, their post-World War II game, Andy and Abbas won that. Their World War II game, Red Winter. And there's others like post-Napoleonic up to World War II. There's Civil War to Napoleonic. There's different categories, so you can check those out. The CSR Awards. Fantasy Flight announced quite a big game this week, Eldritch Horror. This is not an expansion to Arkham Horror, nor is it really, it's kind of a sequel in theme purposes, designed by the same designer, Richard Launius. They'll be debuting it, or showing it off at least, at Gen Con, and I have a game of it scheduled, so I'll tell you how it plays once that's over. But essentially in this one, it's a global thing. You'll be going all over the world, solving different cases, working with, the old ones are working against the old ones, I guess, with Cthulhu and such. So that's Eldritch Horror. In other news, Z-Man has told us a little bit more about the In the Lab expansion for Pandemic. It now adds there's a solo variant where you can play it by yourself, although some might argue and say Pandemic already was a solo game. A couple of Kickstarter projects of note. There's an expansion for Agents of Smersh with the word Swagman in the title. And then the expansion to Fleet is on Kickstarter, Arctic Bounty. WizKids has announced some organized play for the Attack Wing game that's debuting at Gen Con, and they're going to have organized play that covers kind of the Dominion War, with the winners getting an actual DS9 station. That's pretty impressive. It looks a pretty cool model, although there's some controversy over should everyone have a chance to get this model or not. I'm glad that my big news of the week here can be some pretty good news. Last week, actually, we talked about Kickstarters failing, and one of those was the Doom that came to Atlantic City. And there was a lot of fuss about that, and there still is. However, Cryptozoic has announced that they are going to be printing the Doom that came to Atlantic City. And what they're going to be doing is anybody who's ordered a copy of the game through the Kickstarter, they said that those people are going to get their games. They're going to provide the games for them. This is going to be, they're not going to be able to cover every pledge award. They're going to look at them, there's big pledge awards and stuff, but the stores and people who ordered the games will get them when Cryptozoic prints the game, and then the game will also be in print for other people who would be interested in it. I find this really interesting, and it's really nice. It's obviously good publicity for Cryptozoic, but it's publicity that's deserved. They're picking up a Kickstarter project here, they're handling something, and essentially they're giving away some of their profits by doing this. And this is a good ending, hopefully this is the ending, to this story. This is a good way for this to play out. I would not expect companies to pick up every failed Kickstarter, but kudos to Cryptozoic for doing this, and we'll look forward to seeing this game as it comes out in the future. For games to review this week, we have a Dungeon Venture, a fantasy board game. This is What's He Building in There? It's a game I enjoy quite a bit. This is a pretty cool looking box. Dungeon Roll. And then I have this group of 4 games. They're essentially all the same, just different themes, so I'll be reviewing all of them together. Then we'll go back in time and take a look at Take It to the Limit, a new 2-player kind of puzzle party game, Square Up. And then some brand new stuff, Spirium from Esoteric Games and Asmodee, a fun game, Tapple, party game, and then Space Cadets Dice Duel. Now that's not as many games as I've been reviewing, but one of the reasons is I'm going to be gone next week at Gen Con, so some of these other games on the shelf here, I might be reviewing this week, but they won't be posted until next week. I just can't tell you what will be posted. In the Dice Tower Network this week, Plaid Hat has released episode 100. So congratulations to them. And of course you can go listen to the episode, which is kind of a look back at their past 100 episodes. Many gaming podcasts do not make it to 100. So kudos to them for doing so. Secret Cabal has done episode 47, where they take a look at a Thunderstone Advance a year later. And they also talk about the Cult of the New. Not sure who's part of that. Flip the Table reviews Pride and Prejudice, the game. Yay! Roll the Dice and Taking Names. They take a look at Rolling Dice Taking Names takes a look at party games. And the Party Gamecast takes a look at a couple blue-orange games as well as bananagrams. For the Dice Tower itself, I'm pretty excited. Tomorrow we'll be releasing half of an episode, which is our Gen Con preview. The other half of the episode is going to be on the Secret Cabal feed. So they came in, we went together, we recorded 2 episodes. So the first half is actually on their feed. The second half is on ours. On our half, we're talking about our top 10 games that we're looking forward to at the convention, as well as some questions that people ask us about Gen Con. And on theirs, we talk about all the rest of the games that we didn't mention in the top 10 list, as well as they grill us what's it like to go to Gen Con. So both those shows will be posted this week. This week in games that I'm keeping, we're looking at a smaller shelf. We have here, I guess I coordinated these by color, but we have Rex, which is the reprint of Dune, which is a really good game, but I don't know if I'll keep it forever, if only because of the length of the game. I don't know how often I'll play it. Lost Valley is being reprinted, so I'm curious to see how well the reprint looks, but right now this is just a fantastic game about exploring. This here is Through the Desert, the original German version. I should probably upgrade at some point, get rid of this one. The newer version comes in a much smaller box and is essentially the same game. Los Momfos, or Donkey Poop, which as we call it, is a kid's game which is just really funny about feeding things to donkeys. Legendary is a great deck-building cooperative game. If there's one game on this particular shelf that I'm guaranteed to keep, that would be the one. Then, speaking of good kid games, here we have this one. This one just was nominated for the the Kids Spiel Award this year, and it's a really great game with magnets. Dungeon Run is a fun game in which you're going through and fighting different monsters, but at the same time, only one person is going to win the game. So it's an interesting co-op. It's not as good as Cutthroat Caverns, and again, it's probably on the shorter list, but I liked it plenty enough to keep it here. Zuluretto is just another Spiel des Jahres winner. A fantastic game about building your zoo. I like the theme a lot, which is why I'm keeping it, and that's the same reason I'm keeping Ristorante Italia. These games, of the games that are on this shelf, Legendary I would keep for sure, and then after that, probably the kids' games, and Lost Valley. The other ones have a possibility of going, but I like them a lot, which is one of the reasons I keep all my games, but I also love the theming of them. Hey folks, today I'd like to talk a little bit about rule books. Now, rules are something that as an end consumer, I've given a lot of criticism to, and many people do. Because we get the rule book for a game and we expect the rules to be written perfectly as is. Well, they're very often not. One of the big things I point out to. Now, I am not saying that I am a good rules writer. I don't think you have to be good at something to criticize it. Like, if I'm watching someone and they're doing bad music, I don't think I have to be a good musician myself to be able to criticize them. If we had that sort of criteria in place, we would never be able to criticize anything. So I think it's very valid to criticize rules, while at the same time realizing that's a very difficult thing. Of all the things that come together in a game, I think rules writing can be one of the most difficult. When you first write rules for a game, you're kind of writing them as you go. The game is coming together in your mind and you're jotting things out. You're probably not writing out a full rules with intro and component list. I mean, that's really impossible to do. And it's even harder as you get closer to the end of the thing, because you're supposed to be putting in pictures of the game, and the game actually hasn't been produced yet, so you have to use 3D renderings or say, this is where the picture will go here. Putting rules together is difficult also because the designer knows how the game is supposed to play, and he could even teach you how the game is supposed to play, but he has to kind of anticipate what questions people are going to ask about it. So how do you write rules? Well, for some people, they write and edit the rules themselves. I think that's a terribly bad idea. But what often will happen with companies is someone will write the rules. The designer might say, here's the rules. The publisher says, okay, and they go over the rules. And then if the publisher is smart, they will hire outside people, or they will have a special proofreader, rules editor themselves, someone who will go through and edit the rules and go through and make sure they're formatted properly. Now, when I was in college, I worked at a book printing place where I ran a folding machine. But I saw the process from the beginning to the end, from people making these books, and then they edited the books, and then they made the plates for the books, and they printed the books, and so on and so forth, all the way from the process. And you would be surprised at the amount of mistakes that make it through that process when people are doing due diligence. It is very easy to miss something even when 30 people have read it. And so when I'm reading through a book and I see an error in that book, I used to say, come on, how could they have missed that error? It's so obvious. Having worked in the printing industry, it's very easy, even when you have quality controls and checks and double checks and triple checks, it's very easy for stuff like that to make it through. It just happens. Now, hopefully you're trying to mitigate this and have as few mistakes as possible. So the same thing is going to happen in a rule book. Now, why do I say this? Because nothing personal, which is thankfully at the warehouse now and hopefully will be shipped this week or next week. But nothing personal. Rule book, I worked really hard on that and spent many hours on it, and then I sent it to people to edit, and they sent it back with so many editing fixes I just went crazy. I couldn't believe how many errors I had made. So I fixed it, sent it out again, people sent it back. Then we had a professional Game Salute hired a professional to go over, and he said, this is not a good wording for this is not this. And so I worked with this guy for a while until we finally had it. They double checked it. They sent it to me and they said, okay, we're about to send this to the printers, do a final check. And I was really scared because I'm going over this rule book saying, boy, I sure hope there's no errors. Looked good to me. Send it off. What happens? Problems in it. One error in the setup where it says you need to have different people from positions 8 to 5, and it should have said 8 to 4, and it should have said positions 8 to 5. 8 to 4 is actually physically impossible to do. Now, I can write a FAQ, and I'm going to, because there's also, I think, there's a couple tokens in the game that the rulebook doesn't, it mentions them, but doesn't tell you exactly what those tokens are. And as I've played the game recently, there's some people asking me clarifications, which I know just like that, but the rulebook could have been better clarified. And there's also a couple errors on the cards themselves. And I said, wow. And someone on the internet went off and said, this is the result of Kickstarter. And I'll tell you right now, Mr. Whoever said that about the Kickstarter, that is not true. Okay? Game Salute puts as much effort into their games that they publish through Kickstarter as any publishing house. And if I had worked with a publishing house, that same error, those errors would have likely went through. And if you don't believe that, look at some of the stuff Fantasy Flight has put out. Look at some of the stuff other companies have put out. It is really easy to let errors go through. So you really have to be cautious. Unless you've published a book yourself with 0 errors, I would say that, and then here I go back to my original point. If you haven't done it, you don't criticize. No. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you that idea and background. I am not trying to excuse it. Ultimately, the responsibility for the rule book is mine. I'm the person who said, okay. And I'll tell you, it was with much fear and trembling that I sent out the email that said it looked okay. And now it's come back to bite me that there's a couple rules errors. Now, I can fix those. I can put it up on the internet. I can do what I can to help with these errors, but it is what it is. And that's why so many second editions of games exist, because they fix these things. But I hope that in the future we don't make this, but it likely will. Humans make errors, and they're going to get through no matter how much double checking. Now, I do hope that when you read the rules for Nothing Personal, you do understand how to play the game, because there are many rule books out there that don't do that. I can live with a couple errors. I'm ashamed of them. I wish that we had caught them before they went through. But as long as you can figure out how to play the game, I think that we have succeeded, and I think that's what companies should strive for. Should we strive for 0 errors? Yes, but some are going to slip through. I'm very sorry that it happens, and so are other designers and publishers. No one means for those to go through, but I don't think it's a lack of quality control. I think it's just part of the business. There's probably many rule books out there with 0 mistakes in them, but it is a difficult thing. I've just got a game the other day, read through it, and I said, there's a rule mistake. But I'll cut them some slack, because otherwise I'd be a hypocrite. Our question today is from Graham, and he's a big Lovecraftian fan and wants to know which is better, Arkham Horror or Mansions of Madness? Well, that's an interesting question. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of short Lovecraftian style games, so both of these games have a fairly long length. They are different, obviously. Mansions of Madness has cool 3D miniatures. At first glance, Mansions of Madness looks like a Descent style game, a dungeon crawl where you go in and you fight monsters and get out. And I suppose you could play it that way, but it's really not meant that way. Actually, you're going into a mansion and trying to accomplish a goal, whether it's to go find something or to close a portal or what have you. There's different scenarios, and one person acts as the dungeon master, or in this case, the house master, I suppose, and controls the bad guys. Arkham Horror is a cooperative game where you're all working together against some great old one, and it's very story-driven. There's lots of text in the game, lots of reading of cards all over the place, and especially when you add in the expansions, very strong atmosphere. Actually, both games have a very strong Lovecraftian atmosphere, although I would probably give the edge to Arkham Horror there. Component-wise, I'd probably give the edge to Mansions of Madness. Mansions of Madness has some really cool mechanics. It has a puzzle-solving type mechanic, which is neat because it gives you the idea of I have to figure out which wires to connect to where, and it does so in a fairly innovative way. Arkham Horror doesn't really have any very innovative mechanics. It's more about the text that you read on the cards and working together and trying not to go insane, and then when you do start going insane, kind of laughing at the futility of everything. So it's kind of a toss-up for me as which ones I like. For me, the answer was Arkham Horror. I actually no longer have Mansions of Madness because, as you've seen each week, I can only keep so many games. And I like Arkham Horror for a couple reasons more. One, it has a ton of expansions, and so I love the sheer variety. Every game of Arkham Horror I play is completely different because there's so much going on. And I love the story aspect, which is, I think, like I said, stronger in Arkham Horror. Mansions of Madness, I liked it a lot, but my problem with Mansions of Madness, and again, this is a minor problem, the only reason I got rid of it is just simply not enough room, is that the one person has to run everything, and if that person makes a mistake at any point during their setup or during the game, they really can ruin the game for everybody else. That being said, that doesn't mean it's a bad game. It does have a very different feel. It feels overwhelming for the good guys in both games, but I actually like the cooperative feel better because we're all working together against the game rather than working against that one guy. So, 6 of one, half dozen of another, essentially. I think Arkham Horror will have more legs in the long run, but they both do have a number of expansions. Maybe Eldritch Horror will be the one you're looking for. Now there will be 3 of these games in this universe. We'll have to wait and see. Well, before we go, a couple things that you should pay attention to. First of all, I want to point out a website that you may not have seen called the Esoteric Order of Gamers. This website is run by Universal Head, but this is a really good website because if you have ever needed a player aid for games, they make the best. Universal Head has done some graphic design. He's worked in graphic design for many years. He's done stuff for some games. I think he did the board for Tales of Arabian Nights. Really good stuff. But his player aids are really second to none. I remember back when I played Descent 1.0 and there was all this stuff going on in it, and so I needed player aids, and so I would go print out his. I'd go print out his Arkham Horror player aids. He has a lot of different player aids, and so you can go to his website. We'll put it in the link down here in the YouTube description. Also, Daft Concepts. This is a Kickstarter I talked about earlier where they make custom dice, which I thought was a cool idea, where they print them out in boards, you punch them out, put them together. That's a neat concept. And they also make dice towers, obviously something near and dear to our heart. Well, I talked to them and they're going to make an actually dice tower. So you can go support the Kickstarter and get a dice tower, wooden dice tower, and also get some cool of those wooden dice, and they have cork dice, and there's all kinds of neat dice they have, including gold dice, which I don't think anyone's ever going to buy. And they also have a really great YouTube, they have a great introductory video to their Kickstarter. So again, that will also be in the links for Daft Concepts. You can always get all the audio for this news at dicetoweraudio.com, and I sometimes put audio for other, I put sometimes the audio for our top 10 lists and other things there, so if you don't have time to watch but you want to listen, Dice Tower Audio is where you want to go. Also, a big happy birthday to Mike Sherwood, one of our listeners. We hope you had a great week. I don't really have much else other than that, except I have a lot of work to get to. This is going to be another full week at the Dice Tower. We hope you enjoy our videos. Lots of things coming. See you soon. I'm Tom Vasel.
To find out more about all of our podcasts, check out dicetowernetwork.com. To see a listing of our videos, head to dicetower.com. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Cool Stuff Incorporated, where you can buy games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock.
Shut the door.